Hi, hey, hello, what's up? So, what are we doing today? We are making a balanced Druid talent wishlist video. So, I wrote a pretty large feedback post on the Druid forums a couple days ago, and today I wanted to just make a general talent feedback post. So, like about a week ago, like Blizzard kind of fixed a decent amount of the major issues that were occurring with balance. Of course, not everything is done perfectly. I think that like shooting stars could be a little bit further iterated on. I think that the DR could be changed. That's fine. I think that like Starfall could also retain the large AOE, as many people have said, but that's also fine. That's not the core. That's not the core of this video today. And if you're looking for like more feedback posts, I would highly encourage you to go write up some opinion piece on the forums. Make sure your voice can get heard in that way. But today I'm going to be talking about just the balance of talents in general, and what I hope and what I would like to see in the talent changes. So basically, we know that some talents are going to be changed. We don't know the extent of like how that talent rework is going to happen, but with the expansion getting kind of close, I guess now is a better time than later to make a talent wish list video, because the odds of something something massively changing after they do just the initial round of talent stuff, I feel like seems fairly low. So let's kind of go through and talk about what I have as my wish list items for the changes of our tree. So we're gonna start with the top of the tree. I honestly think the top of the tree is mostly fine. If it got shipped today, it would be pretty okay. I feel like the nodes here are interconnected enough. I feel like the nodes here make sense. There's a question on like what is celestial alignment going to be now that our eclipses got changed. So basically how it works is like celestial alignment grants you both eclipse states, but with how our mastery got changed, surely that's going to change in some form or fashion. I don't necessarily know what that's going to look like, but there is a question mark on that. For the most part, though, I think that the nodes at the top of our tree are fine. The only thing that doesn't really make sense is this Alchemy Frenzy node, in my opinion. I think that this could be replaced with Solar Beam, but at the same point, like if the top of this tree shipped today, I wouldn't have too many complaints. Like this is mostly okay, I think. For me, it's like Alchemy Frenzy could be swapped with Solar Beam. That way, we make this middle of the tree more accessible and more reasonable to take other points in here. But at the same point, it's probably fun. So that's the top of the tree. Now let's get to the middle of the tree, which is this stuff over here. It's basically everything except for like blessings, but there you go. Okay, so because then I'm going to classify the last section as like penultimate and capstone traits. This is where some issues really start with the tree just in general, and you can see they start writing about that here. I feel like first off, our nodes and our node pathing just in general is very disjointed, in the sense of it's very difficult to path around without having to go, like even if you wanted to go from here to the middle, you have to path through all of this stuff, all of these 2-pointers to get here. And it's just like it's really difficult to path around. In addition to that, there's no way that you can get from this left side even to any of these right side blocks. And so I feel like the node pathing just in general is disjointed. Something that I think is really, really weird is like, this improved Star Search node is here. Goldrins is here. Star-Lord is right here. And so it's like, it's not very clear what side is supposed to be AoE and what side is supposed to be single target. Because on the right side, we have Shooting Stars, we have Solstice, we have Pulsar, and we have Orbit Breaker, which I conventionally would consider some AoE options, but at the same point, like I guess they technically could also be seen as single target options, but I conventionally look at them as AoE options. On the left side, then we have 3 Starfall nodes and then a Star Surge node in the middle of 3 Starfall nodes. On top of that, we have Goldrin locked behind a Solar Beam node, which we don't have very many 0 DPS nodes just in general in our tree, so locking Goldrin behind a 0 DPS node just means that Goldrin by itself on single target would have to be that much better, and so it's very difficult to path to just in general. Another part about the middle of the tree that I'm not exactly super fond of is like Stellar Inspiration and Umbral Intensity. I feel like these nodes, for lack of a better word, are just kind of uninspired. It's like, okay, Star Surge and Starfall have a 30% chance to empower Eclipse or extend Moonfire and Sunfire by double the amount. I guess. Like, I'm not really ever happy to take these nodes. And it's not one of those things that I'm ever just sitting there like, damn, these really make balanced Druid. Fury of the Skies is, in my opinion, kind of fine, but the Umbral Intensity Stellar Inspiration stuff is way, way bland. The last thing for the middle of the tree that I find incredibly problematic is Stellar Drift just in general. So by design and its placement, I will say. So first off, let's talk about it by design. As it currently stands, it deals 50% additional damage, allows you to cast while moving while it is active, but now has a 12-second cooldown. That's got to change. Something about this has to change. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but you cannot be locked out on stackable Starfall, just as a general rule. So something's going to have to change with Stellar Drift just in general. In addition to that, the placement of Stellar Drift is wrong. It should probably be off to the side of Starfall here and be an optional node. That way you're not forced to path through it if you don't want it. So it should be like a 0 DPS. In my opinion, it should be like almost a 0 DPS utility node where you don't have the 50% additional damage, but it allows you to cast while moving in some variable capacity. In addition to that, even if we do have the ground targeted Starfall, I think that at that point you could have the larger radius like it did in Legion. There's something you can do here, but it should be an optional node, not something that you are forced to path through down through the bottom of the tree. This placement is very, very tough, just as a general rule. That's most of the middle of the tree stuff that I have like major issues with. I also don't really like Light of the Sun's placement. I feel like this node is something that you can never take. I don't see a situation where it's ever takeable. And while it is 15 seconds off of your solar beam whenever you successfully interrupt a target, it has to be incentivized further for you to ever be willing to take it. And I don't know exactly what you would even do. Because of where it's placed. More than anything, the issue with Light of the Sun is not necessarily the power gated behind it. I understand why that feels kind of fair for one point, but at the same point, where it is just it's locked. It's in gridlock in the middle of the tree, and so it's very challenging to get to. All right, let's talk about what needs the most help. Our capstones. I have proposed a large plan for our capstones and have a nice wish list for these. I think I want to go right to left. So starting off with Syzygy, Pulsar, and Orbit Breaker. This is, in my opinion, the highlight of the tree. These are my favorite nodes to play. No complaints. Like I just think this line where you go Shooting Stars into Solstice, into a Syzygy Pulsar choice, into Orbit Breaker, big fan. I think that all those they feel very good on single target. They feel like they also can have a place on AoE. There's probably some cool build with Shooting Star, Solstice, Pulsar, and then Orbit Breaker, and then you're able to cycle into Eclipses over and over, like very frequently, and get more and more of these Orbit Breaker procs, which kind of feeds the Astral Power generation, which feeds into your Pulsar, which feeds into your Solstice procs. I think that obviously Pulsar is not enabled right now on the beta because of bugs, but that's something that I really do like. Okay. Let's talk about Circle of Life and Death and Boat Adaptive Swarm choice node. I am not a fan. I'm not a fan of this node. The more I've thought about it, the more I'm kind of okay with this Twin Moon Stellar Flare choice node. I feel like the change to Stellar Flare, giving Shooting Stars procs just as a general rule, and with it being a choice node on Twin Moons, this is probably fine. What I do not like, I don't like Adaptive Swarm and Boat. I think that Circle of Life and Death could have a place in our tree in some variable capacity, just as like a dot rot comp style talent. But I think that Adaptive Swarm is some of the least fun gameplay that I've ever had, and I do not like Balance of All Things. And I think that additionally, Balance of All Things with how Eclipses are changing, it just doesn't make that much sense. I don't like it just as a general rule, and I would highly like to see these two nodes get removed. And do not be alarmed, I have a proposed plan for what they could actually be changed with, because this is my wish list video. So right here we have, so I guess we can just move on from these, and I'll show you what I think in a second. So to the left here we have a Convoke Incarn choice node, and so I think that Incarn and Convoke probably need to be decoupled, and so I think that Incarn stays in the middle of the tree. Let me just write this out. I think Incarn stays in the middle of the tree, and then you get an IFE, Impeccable Fell Essence style effect. For those who don't know, Impeccable Fell Essence was a legendary that every 12 Astral Power you spent, you got 1 second of cooldown reduction off of your Incarnation. This would allow you to have like 12-20-ish on single target, maybe like 12-12-ish on later patches, CDR on Incarn. It wasn't like crazy or anything. It slotted in very situationally into a lot of encounters. It was very strong. I think that that would make sense for a penultimate and a capstone trait for Incarn. Then you move Convoke over to here. First off, Convoke I think needs to have the exceptional spells for Balanced Druid baseline. With Naya Mastery being gone, I just don't know how this talent isn't atrocious damage-wise. So I think the exceptional spells would be a good thing to have baseline. And then you could put like Unity potentially, or you could put your Unity potentially baseline, or you could put the exceptional spells as the capstone trait. One of those things could happen. But so this would be Convoke, like the Circle of Life and Death Adaptive Swarm thing could be replaced with Convoke, and then some variation of improved Convoke, right? So it could be an exceptional spells thing that we have in Torghast, or it could be our Unity. I think the exceptional spells thing as the capstone trait would make a little bit more sense, because I just don't see how you balance Unity to either not be a complete damage loss or not be a permanent auto pick if you're talenting into Convoke, which I guess capstone traits and just in general should be an auto pick if you're talenting into the penultimate trait. It should be highly encouraged like that. So I guess you could just leave it there where it's like the exceptional spells variant, and if you're going to be talenting into Convoke, you're going to be taking the exceptional spells thing as the capstone anyways. So that's my thoughts on like what you should do here. So basically separate Incarn and Convoke, get rid of the Adaptive Swarm boat, Circle of Life and Death stuff, and then make those two separate places. Okay, here we have Umbral Infusion, and then a Moon Fury of Elune choice node. This I don't understand how this is a capstone trait. I feel like we have too many capstones, but if structurally our tree isn't completely changing how many capstones and stuff like that we have, this has got to get changed in some variable capacity. I think the only talent that is worthy of being a capstone trait here is Moon. And so what I would propose is we put Moon at where this Umbral Infusion thing is, right? And then the capstone trait would be Radiant Moonlight. So I don't know if you guys remember Radiant Moonlight. You probably don't if you didn't play in Legion, but it was the double moon legendary effect. So basically every time you cast full moon, it would immediately reset and let you cast another moon. And so it would cycle your moons very quickly. It would be a large amount of astral power. It's only realistically used on single target for most situations because of the cast heavy nature of it. I think that now how would it work with something at like the Eclipse system? I'm not exactly sure with how it would work with how many casts and prioritizing Eclipse. It may feel a little bit clunky in that regard, but this is my proposed like plan for what to do with these nodes. And so then you could move, in my opinion, so if that's Moon and that's Radiant Moonlight, then you could take Fury of Elune and move it to this Blessing node, because I feel like this Blessing node is going to be out of place, and we're going to talk about this in a second. And then you could take Umbral Infusion and move it up to here to one of the Stellar Inspiration Umbral Intensity nodes that I highlighted earlier as problem nodes. That way, these nodes feel better at the top. This node right here makes a lot more sense, and then you have a realistic capstone at this point of the tree. So now let's talk about this final capstone. The Time-Worn Dreambinder Onus Intuition choice, or that's Clear Vision, banger. I actually really like this choice node. It makes a lot of sense. I want to be able to play with these nodes more. I think that overall, I really like these nodes. I've always enjoyed these legendary style effects in situations where you're going to be playing Time-Worn Dreambinder on single target. I find it super cool. It is kind of weird that you have to path through a lot of Star Surge stuff to get a primarily single target focused talent, but this is fine. Onus Clear Vision, I feel like it makes sense to have to path through Starfall stuff to get Onus Clear Vision. I think that this choice node makes sense. I'm happy with this. What I don't like these blessings. So first off, these blessings almost certainly have to get reworked. Lunar Eclipse is 3 seconds longer and Solar Eclipse is 3 seconds shorter. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked all of beta. In addition to that, it's one of these abilities that it just doesn't make sense now with the new Eclipse. And so I think that now is a great time to rework them. You could replace them with Fury of Elune, in my opinion, which would be a fine penultimate trait. And then you have Onus Clear Vision and Time-Worn Dreambinder, which both get positively affected by astral power generation. And so I think that moving Fury of Elune here would make a lot of sense. And so those are the major things that I would change about our tree. This is my wish list. I don't want this to go any longer than it absolutely has to. And so I'm going to cut this off here. Do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? Again, I'm going to link this forum post down in the description. You guys should go check it out. Post your own comments on the forums. Hopefully we see some changes to Balance Druid soon, and I will see you guys in the next video. Adios.